Hey Brockton, I'm on a mission to strengthen our city by helping every business in Brockton get online. 97% of internet users look for goods and services online, but 58% of businesses don't have a website. Businesses that are online are expected to grow 40% faster and are twice as likely to create jobs. That's huge for small businesses and huge for Brockton. So join me and let's get our city's businesses online, because stronger businesses build a stronger Brockton, and the web can help. Let's go, Brockton. Get your business online. Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Shoe City Scoop. I'm your host, Mayor Bill Carpenter. As we tackle together the challenges facing our city, one of our biggest challenges is to reignite our local economy, create jobs, attract businesses to the city, and redevelop our downtown. Working towards that goal with local business leaders, recently I hosted a meeting right here at City Hall where Bob Rivers, president of Eastern Bank, and Jim Cook, the director of the Lowell Plan in Lowell, made a presentation to Brockton business and governmental leaders about the success story of the redevelopment of the city of Lowell. In today's show, we'll give you a glimpse of some of the presentation that was recently made to Brockton business leaders right here in City Hall. Now, we've got a lot of different people here. If I can indulge, if I can ask everyone to go around the room and just tell us quickly, who you are and what your business is, and then I'll bring on our guest speaker.
Chris Cooney with the Metro South Chamber of Commerce.
Melissa Supanak from the Lowell Plan.
Ray Ledoux from Brockton Area Transit.
Pat Chiramel with the Old Colony Planner Council, right across the street.
Gary Leonard with the Campbell Keith Oil Company and the Campbell Business Association.
Jay Pike, CPA with Sharkansky.
Brian Drukas with Whalen Associates.
Scott Boyd from RJ Messina Construction.
John Keneally, TF Keneally Company.
Ross Messina from RJ Messina Construction.
John Marion, Tuxedos by Marion, and also Downtown Brockton Association.
Proud to follow John Marion, Leo McNeil from Harbor One.
Dan Trout from Mutual Bank.
Sue Joss, Brockton Neighborhood Health Center.
Monique Alaman, Good Samaritan Medical Center.
Jason Barboza with Vicente Supermarket.
Fran Dillon, Stonehill College.
George Spilios, Crown Uniform and Linen.
Allison Van Dam, Metro South Chamber of Commerce. Kimberly Prosper, Metro South Chamber of Commerce.
David Fixetta, Mattress Maker.
Amanda Montero, M&M Seafood.
When you're in a political campaign, politicians always talk about creating jobs. Sounds good. Everybody's in favor of jobs. No one's against jobs. What I hope the difference of philosophy that we're going to bring in my personal philosophy is that economic development is not just about creating jobs. Our approach is going to be to create a climate of attraction where people want to invest in your city. And when people begin investing in our city, that will create jobs and that'll get us going in the right direction. As I try to learn, I look at what's worked in other cities like Brockton. And in my view, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, if there's a model we should really be looking at, it's the city of Lowell, because they've done successfully a lot of the things that we would like to do here. So along those lines, I invited, and I'm so thankful that he accepted my invitation, Bob Rivers, are you president, or what's your title? President. President of Eastern Bank. Bob was very involved in Lowell, is still very involved in Lowell. What gets me excited about guys like Bob Rivers is his commitment to gateway cities. And if you look at what Eastern Bank is doing, they're already doing a lot in a lot of other gateway cities. And my hope is to get him to continue and increase his commitment to the city of Brockton. And I think he's showing his commitment by being here this morning. So please welcome Mr. Bob Rivers.
Thank you, Bob. The city of Brockton means a lot to me, both professionally and personally. Professionally, because Eastern merged with the community bank back at the very end of 2012 and came into this market in a very, very significant way and started to get involved. It means a lot to me personally because I grew up in Stoughton, went to Stoughton High, went far away to college, down 138 to Stonehill College. And so I've spent a lot of time in and around the Brockton area through much of my life. So what goes on here in the city and what happens in the future really means a lot to me personally. So there's a lot invested in this for myself and my team at Eastern. It really led to some of the conversations we've had over the last year or so. Back shortly after we announced the merger, we were invited by John Marion to speak at the Downtown Brockton Business Association and had an opportunity to meet some of you, I think, for the first time at that meeting, and got to know John pretty well, and started to talk with John about the Lowell plan and what we may be able to do here. So at the point when Bill was elected, John made that introduction, and Bill and I had breakfast and talked about this same idea and thought, would it have some applicability here in Brockton, and how might we utilize it? As Bill mentioned, I do a lot around different gateway cities. So we've had a presence as Eastern in Lowell for the last 5 years or so. And since that time, I've really had the pleasure of being not only on the board of the Lowell Plan, but the executive committee of the Lowell Plan during that entire time. So this is something that I've seen very up close and personally, and really seen how effective it has been in building a vision for Lowell and really driving its economic development efforts forward. As someone who travels around all of Eastern Massachusetts, I have the benefit of seeing how things are done in different places, so saw an opportunity to bring this idea to other places in which we have a presence, other places where I'm involved, and we'll talk about some of those later in the presentation. But at this point, I wanted to introduce you to Jim Cook. Jim is the executive director of the Lowell Plan. The Lowell Plan, as Jim will tell you, has been around for over 30 years now. And Jim has been its leader for most of that time period. So really what you have in your hands as a handout is a description, an overview of a little bit of the Lowell Plan's history and how it's constructed to give you a sense of how that organization runs. And then hopefully we'll have some conversation in terms of how it might be applied here in Brockton. Because obviously there's a lot of good things going on here in Brockton. You actually have some structures that are, and organizations that are working to do some of this already. So this is not meant to replace those, remove those. Again, it's just an idea in terms of how it may supplement what you're doing and maybe shape it in some way. So with that,
Thank you, Bob. And thank you for inviting us here. The weather's a lot nastier up in Lowell, I can assure you all. So if you think this is bad, they actually closed everything in Lowell last night for today. But we somehow get the 495 and north snowfall. But just to give you a very quick 1 minute bio of where I'm coming from, I completely lack any perspective of what other communities are doing. I spent my entire professional career in Lowell. When I graduated from college, I went to work at Lowell City Hall in the Planning and Development Office. My last 5 years there, I was assistant city manager. And then in 1990, it would be 24 years in March, I came to the Lowell Plan and the Lowell Development Financial Corporation. I gave myself 5 years when I got there, and it will be 24 years next month. So I spent all my professional career working in Lowell and being involved in planning and development projects. And just as an aside, before I give you a very sophisticated PowerPoint presentation today, which means you're going to read along as I talk about it. In an interesting, ironic twist, our largest commercial property owner in Lowell, who just bought another 850,000 square foot project, is from Brockton. And was born here and went through his schooling here. Somehow ended up in Lowell about 15, 16 years ago, and we grabbed him. And he owns the building that we are actually housed in, which is about 400,000 square feet, and he bought another building. He closed on it in January of 850. So that's my connection to Brockton. Again, we work with this fellow named John Power, and he's done a lot of great things up there.
Does anyone know John is one of the co-founders, leaders of Farley White Interests? It's a large development firm. You know John. So John is aware of our discussion this morning, and again has an interest in coming back home, as it were, to help with this as well.
But we're really going to not we're gonna keep him busy.
Yeah,
We're really not here to get you to get him, yeah.
I only said that because I knew you would.
Yeah, this is not about, you're regional, we're not,
Right.
okay? We're very pro-Q.
I'm representing Brockton today, though.
Yes, okay. Well, we were started back in 1979 by then our United States Senator Paul Songas. And the idea at the time, which I think may make some sense in a lot of communities, but was very specifically an issue in Lowell was, and without due respect to the chamber, because we still have a vibrant chamber in Lowell. But Paul felt that our chamber in Lowell represented 14 communities. And when he went to the chamber and asked them, for instance, to support a major company coming to Lowell, or for funding for an initiative for a development project, they tended to shy away from that because, in fact, some of these companies were looking at other cities and towns that were in their district. So he felt at the time that we need something that's very much for Lowell and only for Lowell, and we need to develop Lowell as a core city in what would be the Chamber's district. So he created this entity called the Lowell Plan. And at the time, I think he gave it a 5-year mission and thought, you know, like Star Trek, we would be off for 5 years, we would do certain things and then it would cease to exist or it would dissolve and fade away. So he got the top business leaders in our city to agree to sit on a round table and put up money and raise money. And initially they raised about $300,000 the first year. And the idea was to make it completely different than a chamber, that you also would have the city manager and whoever's in our city, the city manager is the chief executive officer, and the mayor is basically the chair of a city council and a school committee. But the city manager, the mayor, the chancellor of the university, the president of our community college, they would sit around the table and they would talk to the business leaders behind closed doors about what's going on in our city, what needs to be addressed, what needs to be corrected. And as you would imagine, when you have a lot of very opinionated people, those meetings took a while and took a while for people to adjust to having different opinions, and for City Hall to not feel threatened that in fact the business committee was speaking up and voicing its concerns. But they agreed initially to start with a single focus, because if you were going to do this kind of thing, you couldn't pretend to change a city overnight, and you couldn't pretend to represent everybody and everything. So the initial focus was going to be in the downtown. We would fund a master plan. We hired the Rouse Company, or a subsidiary of the Rouse Company, back in 1980, and they did a 3-year master plan for our downtown. And that master plan cost about $500,000 at the time, and they put up about 2/3 of the money, and they got the city to fund 1/3 of it because they felt that the city was going to implement and follow it, and they needed to have some kind of stake in it. And they got that done, but somehow that became such a success that they thought there's no reason to discontinue this entity. There's too much that it could happen, and too much good that could be performed, and why not have a round table where you would meet on a monthly basis? So the idea was to keep it going, and that was 34 years ago. So we've very much been, I think, a major player in our city. But in watching one of the Red Sox games, he actually said to the city manager, wouldn't it be good if we had a baseball team in Lowell? And people could go see professional baseball cheaper than it would cost you to go see it in Boston. I said, yeah, but how do you do that? How do you get a minor league team? So he said, well, let me call John Harrington, who at the time was the principal owner of the Red Sox, and he did. And he got us a meeting with them. To make a long story short, going through a whole process, we had to do a market study, which the Lowell Plan funded, to show them that in fact there was a terrific market here. Then we had to arrange to get a team that was already in the New York Penn League to Lowell. In the process of doing that, we had a series of confrontations with city government. Namely, that we were going to get a lot of funding to do an arena and funding to build a baseball park, but not completely. We needed the city to put up some money. And the city didn't want to do that because their feeling was, they felt at the time, when I say city, I meant city fathers, the city council, they felt baseball's not going to work in this city. And who's going to come to an arena and why are we doing this? And I'll never forget, just as an aside, Paul Songer said, I'll get us a large grant from the state to build an arena. At the time, there were no grants for arenas in the budget for the state government. So he set up a meeting with then Governor Weld, and 2 weeks before that meeting took place, and I'll never forget it, which shows you how completely unsophisticated I was and where he was coming from, he released a poll to the Boston Globe that showed that if, in fact, if he ran against the governor in 2 years, he could win. So I thought, that's bad form. We're going to go down and meet with the governor and ask him for a lot of money. And at the time, now you've got a newspaper story saying, oh, and if you ran, you beat him. So we went to the meeting. We had I thought, a good meeting with the governor with no commitments for money. And as the meeting was breaking up, the governor came over and he said to Paul, you're not seriously thinking of running for governor, are you? And he said, if that's what it takes to get $20 million for an arena, I will. Within a month, we got a $20 million grant to build the arena. Paul never ran for governor. And I could never have, again, how could we as a Lowell plant do something like that? We couldn't have. And we also got an $8 million grant from the state to build a ballpark. And again, you can go back and check your legislation with all the legislators. There were no line items in state government for minor league baseball parks. But he funneled it through the university, and because the university baseball team would be playing there, we got an $8 million grant to build it. And to make a long story short, we have the Lowell Spinners. They're a single-A short season team, and we set a New York Penn League attendance record for consecutive sellouts. So it, in fact, did work in Lowell, and it does bring people into our city. And it has helped to change the impressions and perceptions people have of Lowell, both inside Lowell and outside Lowell. So if you look at some of the other projects, we needed to continually work on advertising and marketing. We did the There's a Lot to Like About Lowell campaign. It's 80% of the business owners and I may get that percentage wrong, but about 80% of the business owners that would be within the district that you identify as your bid to sort of buy into that. Then you would take a small portion of their assessment and you would create a fund. And that fund, we anticipated the first year would generate about $600,000 in revenue. That is a tax that is collected by the city, but the city can't touch that $600,000. That money is then spent, what the decisions to spend the money are made by a board of directors made up of the businesses and building owners within that bid. The requirement the city has is that it has to commit, and this is legal, they have to commit to funding no less than what they're already funding in your downtown now for public safety, maintenance, cleanliness, parking, whatever. So the idea is that this fund can't be the alternative for the city, and the city can say, no, we don't have to fund that. The city has to, in fact, keep up what's called a minimum maintenance provision. But now you've got money to do marketing in your downtown, to hire brokers, to fill up storefronts, to hire extra security if you feel that's needed, to do just common things, street festivals, whatever. You've got basically a fund that would sustain itself through the years. Again, be collected by the city, but not controlled by the city.
So, I think I heard a lot of good news in Brockton versus where Lowell was when they started. I've spent some time over the last few months traveling around to some different mayors' conferences and things, and I always sign up for the work groups about economic development or revitalizing urban business districts, because I know that's one of our big challenges. So I hear the same kind of good news, because what I hear over and over, they talk about what are the ingredients you need to turn around a city. And they'll talk about transportation. We've got commuter rail and a highway. They talk about education. We've got great public schools, and we've got 3 colleges and universities within 7 miles. And they talk about healthcare. We've got 2 great hospitals. So the more you look at Brockton, a lot of the pieces we need to put together are already here. And we do have a big advantage over a lot of other gateway cities and old industrial cities like Brockton. We do have a lot of stuff there. And I'll tell you that when we talk about the planning, and gee, I'd hate to run into a problem with the city council. That would be awful. But, you know, the council before I got here did make a commitment to funding a city planning office. So we're ready to go to work hard on that right now. We're going to bring in a top urban planner and a top junior planner. And we're going to, with your help, you know, reinvigorate the economic development piece, working with the private sector. But the challenges you can see are there too. I mean, because when he talks about changing the perception, I mean, man, that's like job one for me. You know, it's all wrapped around public safety and the economy. But until people feel safe to come here, I don't think they're going to invest here. I don't think they're going to buy a house here. So that's why you see me making such an effort to change the leadership at the police department and bring in new ideas, because I know that without that change in the perception of the safety of the city, it's going to make it very tough to make the rest of this stuff happen. So the 2 are tied together. Hey, Brockton. I'm on a mission to strengthen our city by helping every business in Brockton get online. 97% of internet users look for goods and services online, but 58% of businesses don't have a website. Businesses that are online are expected to grow 40% faster and are twice as likely to create jobs. That's huge for small businesses and huge for Brockton. So join me and let's get our city's businesses online, because stronger businesses build a stronger Brockton, and the web can help. Let's go, Brockton. Get your business online. Welcome back to Shoe City Scoop. On March 10th, 1941, 13 Brockton firefighters lost their lives battling the blaze at the Strand Theater. The Strand Theater Memorial to those firefighters now sits right outside of City Hall here. Recently, with the Brockton Fire Department, along with the Brockton Police Honor Guard and others, we honored the memory of the 13 firefighters who lost their lives that evening. It's a proud but somber day for the city of Brockton, March 10th of each year, when we acknowledge the sacrifice that was made by the Brockton Fire Department on that day as our city's first responders. And I think it is just so important that we maintain this tradition and particularly teach the story of the Strand Theater fire to our children and grandchildren, because I think it's important for them to recognize that, you know, long before 9/11, long before the Marathon bombing, Brockton firefighters responded just as heroically on March 10th, 1941 to the Strand Theater fire. And it's an important and rich and proud part of this city's history, and it's critical that we continue to acknowledge that sacrifice every year. And I do also want to acknowledge the fact that this is the first year that this commemoration is taking place without Chief Burrell. So I think it's a particularly somber anniversary this year, the first anniversary that we do not have a surviving member of the Brockton Fire Department who was on the scene that night. So my thoughts also go out to Chief Burrell's family, and he will always remain a very big part of the history of the Brockton Fire Department. I don't want to take a lot of time, but I do feel that today is the important day in the city of Brockton, that we do recognize not just the firefighters, but all of our first responders who every day in this city put their lives on the line to protect the residents of the city. And you know, I've often said any of us can run out of a burning building. There are very few who can run into one. And today is the day to remember those folks that are willing to do that for us. I also believe that the anniversary today and the monument where we'll place the wreath in a few moments not just honors those brave men who perished that evening, but I think it also represents the heroism and the resiliency of the city of Brockton. And when I think about what it means to be a Brocktonian, I think the
those characteristics that were exemplified by those brave firefighters that evening really symbolize what this city is all about, the heroism and the resiliency. And you know, our firefighters, along with our other first responders, continue today, every day, to ensure the safety of the residents. So I am honored and privileged to be here with the fire department to recognize today's anniversary. And I hope that all of us will take a moment or two today to be thankful for and to recognize the role of the Brockton firefighters, along with all of the Brockton first responders, what they do for us on a daily basis, and in particular, to remember those 13 lives that were lost, March 10th, 1941. Thank you.
Captain John F. Carroll, Ladder Company 3. Lieutenant Raymond A. Mitchell, Engine Company 4. Firefighter Matthew E. McGarry, Ladder Company 3. Firefighter Roy A. McCarrigan, Squad A. Firefighter Dennis P. Murphy, Squad A. Firefighter William J. Murphy, Squad A. Firefighter Daniel C. O'Brien, Squad A. Firefighter George A. Collins, Engine Company 1. Firefighter Frederick F. Kelly, Engine Company 1. Firefighter Martin E. Lipper, Engine Company 1. Firefighter Henry E. Sullivan, Engine Company 1. Firefighter John M. McNeil, Ladder Company 1. Firefighter Bartholomew Hurley, Ladder Company 1.
Thanks for watching this week's edition of Sioux City Scoop. I'm your host, Mayor Bill Carpenter. Please tune in every week to BCA Channel 12. You can also find us online at youtube.com/Mayor Bill Carpenter. Have a great week. We'll be back next week with another edition of Sioux City Scoop.